स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Welcome to the study of Great Master Sri Ramakrishna, written by Shardanandaji Maharaj. We all know that Shardanandaji Maharaj started writing this Leela Prasanga or the Great Master to build a house, permanent house for the residents of Holy Mother Sharda Devi. Sharda Devi used to reside in different householders' residences, and it would be very problematic for her to move from one house to another house in Calcutta when she came to Calcutta. So Shardanandaji Maharaj was desirous of building a permanent residence for Holy Mother Sharda Devi, which would be near Ganga, so that she could go, because Holy Mother liked Ganga bath. So Shardanandaji's highest aim was to build a house, a residence. So that was built in the Bagh Bazaar, which is called the mother's house. Now, after building that house, it was built on loan or debt. So to clear that debt, Shardanandaji Maharaj started writing this Leela Prasanga, the great master, to clear the debt. So all this life was written because of Shardanandaji Maharaj's desire to serve Holy Mother, the great consort, the spouse, the Shakti Swarupini of the greatest avatara, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So now I have got a beautiful incidents, a live incidents from the life of one devotee, ashrama devotee from Hyderabad, where we can find Swami Ranganathanandaji Maharaj and others coming into this picture. So I'll narrate that incidents of the Shakti Swarupini. Avatara Shrestha Varishtha Ramakrishna's spouse Shakti, Mother Sharda Devi's one incidents I'm going to tell you, and then we'll proceed. It's a very nice thing. I read it 2 days back. I just wanted to share with you. This incident is narrated by one very senior Swamiji, Swami Ananyaanandaji Maharaj. He's no more. He has given up the body. He was in Hyderabad. He's originally from Karnataka. He was from Bangalore. He was looking after one Ramakrishna Institute of Moral Science. So he was in different other foreign countries. So he gave up his body in Belur Math, Swami Ananyaanandaji Maharaj. So this incident is heard from Swami Ananyaanandaji Maharaj. He was then at Hyderabad Ashram. Most revered Srimad Swami Ranganathanandaji Maharaj was then one of the vice presidents of Ramakrishna Math and Mission, and also lived in Hyderabad. Now, I had to go to Hyderabad for a few days for job. That's when I heard the below incident. The person who is narrating this incident got it from Swami Ananyaanandaji Maharaj. So what is that incident which happened? 3 local devotees, that is of Hyderabad, were on pilgrimage for Belur Math. They were going to Belur Math. Kamarpukur and Jairambati as well, and also Dakshineshwar and other places related to Holy Trio. As they were supposed to leave for pilgrimage, the earlier day before leaving, they went to meet Most Revered Ranganathanandaji Maharaj at Hyderabad Math to take his blessings for the pilgrimage. One lady in that group, 3 were going there to Belur Math. One lady in that group told Revered Maharaj, I have got permission from Jairambati to stay in Jairambati for 3 days. To which Ranganathanandaji Maharaj smiled and said, very good, very good. It's a privilege to stay with Sri Sri Ma for 3 days. The devotee now, after Ranganathanandaji Maharaj told it's a privilege to stay with Holy Mother there in Jairambati, so she replied in a sad voice. In grief, she told Maharaj how nice it would have been if Sri Sri Ma, his Holy Mother, would be there in Jairambati even now. We are going so far. I would have been really blessed. To which Revered Maharaj answered, what do you say? Mother is still there. She lives. Don't worry. The devotees thought that Maharaj was comforting them. At once, Revered Ranganathanandaji Maharaj could read the thoughts of that lady and told her again in a serious voice, I say, Holy Mother Sharda Devi is still living there in Jairambati even today. The ladies were surprised, seeing Revered Maharaj speaking in such a serious tone, as his words were always simple and sincere. The next day, the devotees set out for journey as there were 3 ladies. They reached Belur Math in a couple of days. They reached Sri Sri Matra Mandir, that is Jairambati, birthplace of Sri Mother Sharda Devi, after visiting Kamarpukur. First 3 days had passed in Jairambati. They were all set to return to Belur Math the next day, as this was their last day in Jairambati. After night prasadam, that is the supper, those 2, because especially in all the centers of West Bengal, night supper will be quite late. which is not like South Africa and other Western countries. So the offering will of the bhog or the offering of Sri Ramakrishna or Mother Sharda Devi will be at something like 8:45. So after the offering comes back, so maybe the supper would be at 9 o'clock or 8:50. That would be the timing. So it is very, very late for South African and other Western people. So now, after the night prasadam, the other two women went to bed. The third woman who had asked the question to Revered Ranganathanandji Maharaj was sitting alone outside the guest house. She couldn't get sleep. She was in sorrow. She was talking to herself. I miss my mother Sharda Devi very much. Everything is there here in Jairambati, old house and the new house of mother, the road in which 3-4 years that child Sri Sharda Devi used to walk, the river in which she used to go and take bath, the same paddy field where Sri Mother, Sri Shima, and also her mother, Shama Sundari Devi, used to walk. Everything is there. But I can't see Holy Mother. There is no Holy Mother. Tears rolled down on the lady's cheek as she had to return tomorrow the next day. She took the Holy Mother's soil, the dust of that land, soil, tied it in a piece of cloth, while thinking her whole life has to be spent with the memory of this soil, wiped away the tears as she stood up, thinking that this was her last visit to this holy place. Already she was quite old. Maybe she would never again get this fortune to come to Jairambati again in her lifetime. It was pitch dark as the whole village of Jairambati was asleep. Quite all round, the lady walked alone towards the temple. Soon after a while, she was astonished. What did she see? She saw Holy Mother Sharda Devi sitting on one side of the temple and cleaning the place surrounding the temple. So even now, Mother Sharda Devi will be working for the sake of the devotees. She saw with her own eyes that Holy Mother is sitting and cleaning the temple and around those places, surrounding the place, as it was fully dark all around. To that astonishment of that lady, the place where Mother was cleaning was illuminated by the divine light emanating from the body of Mother Sharda Devi. The woman stood stunned, thinking to herself that Holy Mother had passed away, given up the body in Samadhi many, many years ago. But how is this possible? I can see Holy Mother here working around the temple. Sri Ma is here. She had become completely speechless. At that time, Holy Mother Sharda Devi looked at that lady and told, "Come, my dear child, come and sit here." The lady saw that Sri Sharda Devi was approaching towards her. After a while, the lady regained consciousness. She was shell-shocked and requested Holy Mother. And as requested by Holy Mother, she went to her and then she told Holy Mother, Mother, please, you sit down, you take rest, give me those things like the broom or whatever Holy Mother was working there. I shall clean the place. Hearing this, Sri Mother Sharda Devi laughed and told, when my daughter comes to mother's house, does the mother let her work? Mother has to work for the child. When the daughter has come to the mother's house, how can I make the daughter to work? Mother will work. To which the lady replied, okay, mother. Okay, then if you don't want me to work, I shall call the other sannyasis, the swamis who are there. They will do the cleaning. Why should you clean? Who are residing here, all the sannyasis are residing here, they're taking rest. I'll call them, they will clean. Why should you clean? To which Holy Mother replied again, you see, my child, my boys, my children are tired by working the whole day and they are taking rest for some times. Do not disturb them. When Holy Mother's work was completed, there was more conversation between two of them. The woman was surprised to see that Holy Mother was speaking in her own mother tongue. That is, she came from Andhra Pradesh, from Hyderabad, and to her surprise, astonishment, Holy Mother was speaking in her own mother tongue, Telugu language, with her. She was full of astonishment. She did not understand anything. How could Mother speak Telugu language? Mother didn't know any other language other than Bengali. So that lady was completely blank. Everything which she saw and heard was so real, and she was completely aware of everything going on around. As she tried and came to know it was not a dream, it was not a figment of imagination, it was completely real. As she was fully awake, she couldn't believe it. But at the same time, she couldn't just take it away from her mind as imagination. Now, Holy Mother Sharda Devi told her, "Go, my child, go to bed, take some rest. As you have to leave tomorrow, you have to travel a long distance." The lady got up and started walking towards the guest house where she was staying in Jairambati, and saw that Holy Mother Sharda Devi was looking at her towards roadside until she reached that house. She was looking at her, constantly watching. All the ladies were surprised after she reported everything that had happened last night, and thought that it was completely Mother's grace, and they decided not to tell anyone, because that is the tradition in India. Any spiritual visions or experiences should not be shared with everybody, anybody and everybody, only with like-minded people who are of the same wavelength, who have faith. And also it can be shared only with your gurus or some senior monks. Now, deciding so not to tell anybody, everybody came back to Hyderabad. Now they went back to the Hyderabad ashram. The next day, go down to Sri Ramakrishna in the temple and went to meet revered Srimad Swami Ranganathanandaji Maharaj. And for their surprise, as soon as the woman who had doubted the mother's presence earlier and who had that vision there in Jairambati, go down to revered Ranganathanandaji Maharaj. Revered Ranganathanandaji Maharaj smiled and asked her, "What? Do you believe now? Do you believe in the grace of Mother? Do you believe that Holy Mother Sharda Devi still live there in Jairambati?" The woman was taken aback. "Maharaj, how did you come to know about the incident which took place in Jairambati?" Revered Ranganathanandaji Maharaj avoided the answer and sang 2 lines of a Bengali song. What is that Bengali song? He sang there. Dak dekhi mon dakar moto, dekhi shama kemon takte pare. O mind, call Mother, the Divine Mother, as you can call her sincerely, with earnestness, and you will see how Mother Shama could be. How can she keep quiet? She will come running to you, give you vision. So this was the incident which I read 2 days back, and I was eager to share that with you, because this whole Leela Prasanga was written, and when Holy Mother gave up her body in Samadhi, there were last some portion which Shardanandaji Maharaj had not completed. And because Holy Mother passed away, he stopped writing there. Many people requested him, "Maharaj, complete this work, the great master." He couldn't, he told. It was the inspiration and energy from Holy Mother that I could do it. Once Holy Mother has left this earthly existence to her abode, now I can't do anything. He couldn't complete. It's incomplete. Now, recently, revered one of the Vice President Maharaj now, who was the earlier General Secretary, revered Prabhanandaji Maharaj. He has completed that portion, but Shardanandaji Maharaj couldn't complete. All this work which we are reading it was done for Sharda Devi, to serve Sharda Devi. So that's why I wanted to share these beautiful incidents, because it will increase our faith. And we will, with our redoubled faith, we will go now to see the life of Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar. Now he is performing his, all of us will now go to Dakshineshwar, where Sri Ramakrishna is performing his Madhura Bhava Sadhana, the really establishing the relationship with the Lord in a conjugal love. That is called Madhura Bhava, the sweet mood. It is known from the study of the history of religions that with the ultimate development of any of the five moods, the aspirant forgets himself and feels happy when the object of his love is happy. I had explained it to you. True love is when the person whom we love is to be made happy. We have to forget ourselves. We have to sacrifice everything for the sake of the person whom we love. So that is the important aspect of devotion or anything for that sake. Otherwise, if we are more concerned about our selfishness, our own joys, the other person whom we love is just only a object used for my happiness, that is not true love. It is attachment, it is possessiveness. So true love is in the welfare and happiness of others. So that's why Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, it is known from the study of the religions that with the ultimate development of any of the five modes, the aspirant forgets himself. That is very, very important. We have to forget ourselves, the I, the individuality, my ego, my selfishness. Many, many times I have told the essence of religion or any yogas, as Swami Vivekananda tells in Karma Yoga, you filter, you take the residue out of all the yogas, all the paths. What is that you get? Perfect self abnegation. Perfect, you know the meaning. Self, you know, ego, selfishness. Negation, you know, removal. Abnegation, completely removing that. So complete removal of our ego, complete removal of our selfishness is the goal of spiritual life. So if you remove your ego, what remains is God. God alone remains. There will be nothing else but God. You are of the nature of God, Atma Swarupa. So if you remove your ego, which is really Maya. So Ramakrishna used to take one later on when he was in Dakshineshwar, when the other direct disciples and other devotees used to come, householder devotees. Once he was explaining to a devotee, he took a towel, that big piece of cloth, the towel, he held it before him. He asked the other devotee who was sitting on the other side, can you see me? The devotee told no. Why? Because the towel is covering you. It is in between me and you. So similarly, the Lord, Paramatman or Atman, is so near to you. He is your Antaryami, he is in your heart. Why can't you see him? Because that ego, the layer of ignorance, ego, that covering is obstructing your vision of the Paramatman. Why you can't see? Because of ego, your ego. Ego is Maya. So Ramakrishna told these words, ego is Maya. So you cannot see God who is so close than to your father and mother, even is so closer than your body. But you can't see him. Why? Just like the towel, Ramakrishna was using that towel as the example. Because this towel is obstructing, you can't see me, though you are so near to me. Likewise, you can't see Lord who is in your heart, who is so near to you. Because the obstruction of that ego, ego is Maya. That's what Sri Ramakrishna used to tell. Now, that's the important thing. Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, in the history of religion, when we study thoroughly, investigate, the ultimate development of any kind of five modes, the aspirant forgets himself. Is to remove that ego. He forgets that ego, forgets the individuality. He thinks only of the person whom he loves with devotion. Now it is the Lord. When the object of love, he forgets himself and feels happy. when the object of his love is happy. Just like the mother will be happy when the child is happy. The mother will be unhappy when the child is unhappy. So this is the case with anybody for the sake of any lovers, the boy or the girl, the man or the woman. When the beloved is happy, he will be happy. When the beloved is unhappy, he will be unhappy. It's just like that. So, absorbed in the thought of him during the time of separation from him, he sometimes loses even the consciousness of his own existence. From the study of devotional books like the Bhagavata, it is seen that not only did the gopis of Vraja, that is Vrindavan or Gokula, forgot in this way their own existence, looking at Krishna, going to Krishna, talking to Krishna, playing with Krishna, serving Lord Krishna. They forgot their own identity. They forgot who they were. They were married women. They were married people. They had so much of responsibility. But the presence of Krishna, the moment he used to play the flute, the moment he used to play. So he was only 10 years old when he left Vrindavan. He was such a small boy. So the Lord's presence made them forget everything. So it is told in the Bhagavata that not only did the gopis of Braja forget in this way their own existence, but actually felt on occasions identified with their beloved Krishna. They themselves became Krishna. So all gopis used to feel they are Krishna. They forgot their own identity. They were so much absorbed in Lord Krishna that they lost their identity. They forgot that they were Gopika Sri or Gopa. They used to feel, everybody used to feel that they are Lord Krishna's. So it is told in Vaikuntha. If you go to Vaikuntha, the Lord stays there, the Lord Vishnu, the abode of Vishnu. They tell, there are different types of mukti, liberation. Sayujya, Sarupya, Samipya. Samipya means to live near God. Vishnu, Narayana in Vaikuntha, looking at him, be happy, looking at Lord Vishnu, always looking at him, enjoying his presence, enjoying his every activity. That is Samipya, to be very near the Lord. That's one of the liberation. Then it is called Samipya Mukti. Then Sayujya Mukti is being one with the Lord, identifying yourself, being one with the Lord. Then there is another thing. You think of the Lord so much that you become that. And what is that called? Mukti, that liberation called? It is Sarupya. Rupa means form. Sarupya means the same form. So that's why if you go to Vaikuntha, you can see so many people, so many Vishnu, so many Narayana moving around. You'll be wondering, how could there be so many Narayanas moving around? So because they are thinking of Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayana, all the time, constantly, without fail, they themselves become Narayana. They forget their identity. That's called Sarupya liberation, Mukti. So likewise here, the Gopi Kastris in Gokula or in Vrindavan, in Vraja, and also the Gopas, they were thinking so much of Lord Krishna, meditating on him constantly. Yesterday in Bhagavad Gita, we read that verse. What is that? What is the best way of controlling your mind? How can you control your mind? The best way of controlling your mind is by Matparaha. Lord Krishna tells, what is that? What is the meaning of Matparaha? To be identified with the Lord alone. That is the surest way of controlling all your indriyas and making your mind steady, getting to the state of Sthita Prajna Lakshana. So how can you control your mind? Easily. It's very difficult. Krishna tells in the earlier verse, that is the 60th verse, Lord Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramathini haranti prasavam manaha. So Arjuna, indeed, the senses are very, very powerful. They forcibly carry away the mind of even the wise man, the strongest man who is striving to control them, to realize God. So here Krishna says that sense regulation is not that easy. Yatato hepi kaunteya Purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prasabam manaha. So after that, he gives us the easy way, 3 disciplines by which you can control them, make your mind steady, and then get into the mode of liberation while living, not liberation or mukti after dying, but complete control of your mind and indriyas while living here. So what is the surest and easy way? Lord Krishna tells in the 61st verse, 61 verse of the second chapter, he tells, Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasyendriyani tasya prajna pratishtita. His mind becomes steady. Siddha prajna, he becomes a siddha prajna. How? So Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna in the 61st verse, in the second chapter, the aspirants, spiritual aspirants, are established in perfect knowledge, who control, subdue, sublimate their senses, sense organs, all the 5 sense organs, and the mind, and keep their minds ever absorbed in me. By keeping their mind ever absorbed in the Lord, by meditating on Him, by doing His work, by doing the Karma Yoga, serving the children of the Lord, by reading His books, reading the scriptures. So Ambarisha, great devotee king Ambarisha in Bhagavata, he gives the idea how to keep the mind on the Lord, how to keep all the indriyas concentrated. That's called Dhamma, controlled, not allowing out to meet the sense objects outside external world. Don't allow the mind, how to keep it inside itself. So Ambarisha engaged his mind in remembering the lotus feet of Sri Krishna by allowing all the indriyas, the eyes, the nose, the ears, the tongue, the touch, the skin, completely engaged in the Lord. He himself tells in Bhagavata, what did he do? So it is a surest way, very easiest way of keeping the mind in the Lord. So the indriyas then cannot trouble you. How is that? The great king Ambarisha is telling. What is he telling? Ambarisha engaged in his mind in remembering the lotus feet of Sri Vishnu, Narayana. He engaged his tongue in chanting the wonderful names. He engaged his tongue in chanting the wonderful names of the Lord, or taking prasad through the mouth, eating only prasad, offering everything. Then forms, virtues. Not only he is chanting his names, he is chanting the names and forms and virtues and pastimes of God. He used his ears in hearing the narrations, the Harikatha, told by the gurus and great acharyas. People will be narrating. By hearing them about the Lord, he filled his ears, his mind. So he's using the sense organ to hear only the Lord's knowledge, pastimes, Harikatha. His eyes in seeing the beautiful deity of God in the temple, but also the pictures and picturizing things in the mind, eyes about the Lord. His eyes seeing the beautiful deity of the temple. His sense of touch, the sense of touch massaging the feet of the devotees of the Lord. His nostrils in smelling the aroma of the fragrant objects that has been offered to the Lord. It's called Nirmalya, the flowers, the agarbatti, everything is offered to the Lord. Before that, you should not smell it, the prasad, everything. After that, as Nirmalya, as the prasad offered, you can smell, use this nose for that. So then, Ambarisha is telling, how is he using his nose? After that, his feet in circumambulating Pradakshina, the temple, and his head in paying obeisance to the Lord and his devotees. In this way, Ambarisha, King Ambarisha, the devotee, subdued all his senses by engaging them in the service of the Supreme Lord. So Lord Krishna is telling, there is the surest and easiest way how to control your senses and make it steady. What is that? Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasyendriyani tasya prajna pratishtita. They, the spiritual aspirants, are established in perfect knowledge. who subdue their senses, sublimate their senses and keep their minds ever absorbed in me. So Lord Krishna is telling in Bhagavad Gita how to control the senses, how to keep it in me. So now you can see how the gopis here, it is being told how they used to forget everything. They forget themselves. They became Lord Krishna himself, meditating on Krishna, the pastime of Krishna, seeing Krishna, serving Krishna, the gopis, the gopas. So the gopis of Braja forgot in this way their own existence, but actually felt on occasions identified with their beloved Krishna. It is well known from the devotional books of the Christians, the Catholic Christians, that absorbed in the thought of the passion of Christ, some mystics bore the stigmata and bled from those marks on their bodies because they were meditating constantly on Jesus Christ, wherever he was crucified, wherever the nail, and they were bleeding in the hands and the legs, and wherever he was nailed to the cross. So, because they identified with Christ so much, they were also feeling the pain. They shared the pain. It was bleeding because they were meditating so much of Jesus Christ. It started bleeding. It's called stigmata. It happened in the life of Saint Francis of Assisi and also Saint Catherine of Siena. Therefore, we find that with the final development of each one of the five moods, the aspirant becomes absorbed in the thought of his or her object of love and united and identified with him under the strong impulse of love, devotion. Realize the non-dual. Finally, they come to, from the dual or personal deity, the Lord will take up to his original nature, the non-dual, one without the second state of consciousness. Sri Ramakrishna's unique life of spiritual striving has thrown wonderful light on this matter. He practiced each of these five modes of spiritual love, and each of them he became merged in the object of his love and absolutely forgetting his own existence, realized the non-dual reality. So whichever path he took, whichever yoga he took, whichever sadhana he took up, whichever bhava, the panchabhavas, whichever bhava he took up and went to the end, he used to go to that one non-dual state of consciousness. So he practiced each of the five modes of spiritual life, and each of them he became merged in the object of his love and absolutely forgetting his own existence. So that is very, very important, forgetting our own existence, individuality. So forgetting his own existence, realized the non-dual reality. So that is the surest way, being humble, surrendering to Lord, removing our ego. So we call ourselves devotees, and we'll be developing our ego and becoming so much of so egotistic and so much of egoism in us. And we call ourselves devotees. And how can we call ourselves devotees when we have so much of ego? So again and again, Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling us, and Ramakrishna is showing that absolutely forgetting his own ego, his own existence, then only you can realize the non-dual reality. How, it may be asked, can the human mind experience, with the help of these modes, the reality of non-duality? Now, how can these modes, which are based on duality, you are separate and the Lord, your personal God, is separate. So how, the question is asked by Shardanandaji Maharaj himself by taking the Purva Paksha as an opponent. It is asking the question, how can the human mind experience, with the help of these modes, the five modes or any modes, the reality of non-duality? Non-duality means that is which single, without one, without a second, without duality. That is non-duality, the reality of non-duality. How can that be experienced? Which is beyond all modes. It is beyond all modes. There is no subject-object relationship there. There's only one. So how can through these modes, which are dual, how can we go beyond that, which is non-dual state, which is beyond all these modes? So for the question is, for no mood can ever rise, exist, or develop in the human mind without the consciousness of two persons. No moods can ever rise, exist, or develop in the human mind without the consciousness of two persons. Then how can we reach the non-dual state? Quite true. Shardanandaji Maharaj himself takes the position of the opponent, Purva Paksha, asks the question, and now he will answer it. Yes, you are right. Your question is true, quite true. But the more, whichever, any of the modes, the more a mood develops, the more does it spread its own influence and remove gradually from the aspirant's mind all contrary ideas. All other contrary ideas are completely removed, obliterated from the mind of the aspirant as he progresses in any of the modes. So Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, quite true, but the more a mood develops, the more does it spreads its own influence and remove gradually from the aspirant's mind all contrary ideas. Again, when it is fully developed, the concentrated mind of the aspirant sometimes in meditation forgets I am the servant of the God, the I, and he remembers thou, the master, as also the relationship between them and remains perfectly identified through love with the reality denoted by the word thou, that thou art, tat tvam asi. So I is completely obliterated as you go forward. Ego is gone. Thou, that thou art, thou, that is Parabrahma Swarupa, the Lord alone remains. So that obliteration of I, removal of ego, is the essence of all moods, all religion, all path, or whichever spiritual life is. Obliterating, removal of ego, I, forget yourself. The Lord alone exists. That is the goal. So again, when the mood is fully developed, the concentrated mind of the aspirants, sometimes in meditation, forgets I, that is the servant, and thou, the master, as also the relationship between them, and remains perfectly identified through love with the reality denoted by the word thou. That is Parabrahma, Paramatma, one without a second, that is super consciousness, Satchit, Ananda, Akhanda. Now, once Sri Ramachandra, Lord Ramachandra in Ayodhya asked Hanuman, Hanuman, how do you see? How do you look at me? Hanuman was practicing the Dasya Bhava. I, Hanuman, is the servant, and Lord Ramachandra is my master. So he had this Dasya Bhava, servant attitude to Ramachandra. So now Lord Ramachandra himself is asking Hanuman, Hanuman, how do you look at me? What is your attitude towards me? Then do you know the reply of Hanuman? It's very famous reply. You can see that Sri Ramakrishna himself telling about this in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. You can find that. So Hanuman replied, Oh Lord, when I have the body consciousness, that I am the body, that ego is there, then I feel that I am the servant and you are the master. When my mind rises to a higher state where I feel that you are the whole and I am a part of you. You are the whole, you alone exist and I am a part of you. So that is Vishishtadvaita. This, when I have the ego, I am a separate entity, I am the servant and you are the master. That is Dvaita, two. Then as you go forward in spiritual life, Hanuman himself is telling, when I see you as the whole, I am a part of you. That is Vishishtadvaita. Then when I lose my ego, then I become one with you. I and you are one and the same. I don't see any difference. There the I is obliterated. I become one with you. I become Rama myself. This was the reply of Hanuman. I is obliterated. That is the goal of all spiritual life. There will be no I at all at that time. Then where is the world? Where is this thing when you don't have your I? Everything stops. Only the Lord exists. So that's what Shardananda Maharaj is trying to explain through that Dasya Bhava. I, the servant, and thou, the master, as also the relationship between them. Everything goes away and remains perfectly identified with love, with identified through love with the reality denoted by the word thou. That is Paramatman, God. The human mind, the eminent teachers of India say, is not simultaneously conscious of I and thou and the loving relationship between them. Again, I shall repeat it, grasp it properly. The human mind, the eminent teachers of India say, is not simultaneously conscious, aware of I and thou and the loving relationship between them. It knows the entity denoted by the word thou one moment and that denoted by the word I the next moment. So you can't do that simultaneously. There's a saying in science, basics of science, two things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. So the human mind, the eminent teachers of India say, is not simultaneously conscious of I and thou and the loving relation between them. It knows the entity denoted by the word thou one moment and that denoted by the word I the next moment. But as the mind oscillates quickly between the ideas of these two entities, I and thou, start oscillating between these two entities, there develops in it an idea of a relationship between them. How wonderfully Shardananda Maharaj is explaining. When this starts oscillating, it knows the entity denoted by the word thou one moment and the denoted by the word I the next moment. But as the mind oscillates quickly between the ideas of these two entities and the relationship between them, it seems to be simultaneously consciousness of these two entities and the relationship between them. As the mind oscillates quickly between the ideas of these two entities, there develops in it an idea of relationship between them. It then seems to be simultaneously conscious of these two entities and the relationship between them. But when the restlessness of the mind is destroyed by the influence of the matured mood of love, it gradually becomes able to detect what has been said above. The more the functioning of the mind is stilled, the more the functioning of the mind is stilled, that is vritti, chitta vritti, constantly in our mind, the vrittis will be coming up. The formation of the mind, chitta vritti, the mind has different aspects. The first aspect is the matter with which the mind is made up of. It is called chitta. Now, the next aspect of the mind is the doubting aspect, curiosity aspect. Samshayatmika manas. Then the next aspect of the mind is Nischayatmika buddhi, the intelligence which is always taking some decision, Nischayatmika buddhi. Then we have the another aspect. Now, the first one is Chitta. Then we have that is the mind stuff. Then we have the Samshayatmika manas. Nishchayatmika, Buddhi, then all these things are reported to one thing called ego, I, the I sense. So that is that ego, I sense. So the mind constitutes of all these parts. So now, whenever any ears or eyes or nose or tongue or touch the indriyas, they go and have some vyavahara activity outside, meet the world and get some information. Immediately, even one from the eyes or from the nose or anything, then there will be a vritti formation in that chitta, that is the mind stuff, there will be a formation in the mind. So that is called chitta vritti. It has a formation, chitta vritti formation. So that through that, the ego, it is reported to the ego, is the thing outside. It will refer to the memory earlier, whatever you have seen, and now you will get a decision. Then the buddhi, then the mind will start thinking, what is this? What is this? I had seen something earlier. It is similar to that. What is this? It might be this, it might be that. That is the mind. Samshayatmika manas, curiosity, trying to know what is this, what is this, this aspect of the mind, start thinking. So the another aspect, deeper aspect of the mind is buddhi, nishchayatmika. Yes, out of the memory earlier, this is this. You take a decision. This is definitely this. That is buddhi. And all these things will be reported to that I ego, the master ego. You are the master who are representing the individual. Yes, you come to know that. So this is the aspect of mind. So there will be constantly this chitta, the mind, vrittis will be getting up to be reported to the owner, that is the I. And the buddhi will decide and tell through the memory, earlier memories and everything, it will tell. So you will come to know this will be happening. Every fraction of a millionth of a second, if this will be happening continuously, vrittis will be coming. So what is yoga? That's why so much of thing is reported from the outer world. The mind goes out and goes on reporting so many things coming constantly. Your mind is kept in a state of restlessness. Constantly it will be reporting all the 5 doorways, the indriyas, and the memory, and the habits, and the impressions, everything will be forming, making the chitta vritti formations. And that's why you cannot see the Lord who is within you. It will make you forget the restlessness, the disturbance of the mind. Cannot, even though the Lord is within you, because everything is being reported quickly, so quickly, millionth of a second, to the owner, the ego. So you cannot see the Lord who is within. Now, subduing this chitta vritti, not the mind of vritti to take that formation, is the goal of yoga. The very first verse in Raj Yoga, Patanjali Raj Yoga is Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The goal of yoga is to stop the formation of the Chitta Vritti, reporting to the ego. Then what remains is realization of God, that is your true nature, that is Atma Swarupa, Parabrahma Swarupa. You become one with that. So with this idea, the science behind Raj Yoga, all these can be understood. What is that? Now Sharadanandaji Maharaj is trying to tell that thou and I, that idea goes away. It then seems to be simultaneously conscious of these two entities. The relationship between them is understood. But when the restlessness of the mind, what is this restlessness happening? Every smallest idea from the world coming into your mind through the ears, through the eyes, through the nose, through the mouth, through the skin, is just like one stone being dropped into the lake, placid lake. So there'll be wave formation, one stone falling, waves. So that is compared to the chitta vritti, the waves in the mind. So 5 stones constantly is falling simultaneously. So many stones are coming, 5 stones together. So what will be the disturbance? So you cannot see the bottom of the lake, the placid bottom of the lake. And also within that lake, there is so much of impurity like mud, dust, and so many other things, plants. So already within our mind, we have so many impressions, so many impure thoughts, so many samskaras, so many vasanas. So many that Parishad Varga, Kama, Krodha, Mada, Matsarya, Lobha, and Ashtapashas, everything already is there in our mind. They are just like the dust and other things, the mud and everything inside the lake. So until the lake is placid without any vritti, the waves, you can see the bottom. That is the Lord. So when there is so much of restlessness constantly through your all five organs, everything is falling into your mind. And it is being reported to your ego. The Buddha is telling that the mind is doubting this and giving it to the ego, which is happening millionth of a second. Then how can you see the Lord who is within? So you cannot. So the restlessness has to stop. That's what Shardananda Maharaj is telling. But when the restlessness of the mind is destroyed by the influence of the mature mood of love, it gradually becomes able to detect what has been said above. The more the functioning of the mind is stilled at the time of meditation, the more the functioning of the mind rising into chitta vritti waves, wave formation, the more it can be stilled. The restlessness can be quelled. When the restlessness of the mind is destroyed by the influence of the matured mood of love, it gradually becomes able to detect what has been said above. The more the function of the mind is stilled at the time of meditation, the more does it understand by degrees that it was the one non-dual reality from two angles of vision and mistook it for two independent identities. So when that restlessness is quelled, when the mind becomes calm, there is no disturbance, there is no wave formation, chitta vritti, then the more the functioning of the mind is stilled at the time of meditation, the more does it understand by degrees that it was the one non-dual reality from two angles of vision. The same thing is mistook for two independent entities. There was no two, there was only one. Then the ego I goes away. The subject object relationship goes away, and that is called as nirvikalpa samadhi. The forgetting of I is called nirvikalpa samadhi. When the chitta vrittis are completely erased, that is called nirvikalpa samadhi. That is the goal of yoga and the goal of all the yogas. One is simply amazed to think what vast periods of time and what superhuman efforts of numberless aspirants were necessary for the full development of each of the moods. It took so many years to develop this mood and reach that non-dual state. So one is simply amazed to think what vast periods of time and what superhuman efforts of numberless aspirants were necessary for the full development of each of the modes through which the human mind was enabled to realize that non-dual reality. When we study the history of religions as embodied in the scriptures, it becomes clear that a particular mood became the principal prop of the human mind during meditation. In a particular age, in every particular age, a particular mood became prominent. That's what Shardananda Maharaj is telling. When we study the history of religions, as embodied in the scriptures, it becomes clear that a particular mood became the principal prop, important thing of the human mind during meditation in a particular age. And with the help of it, many eminent aspirants of that age realized God, and a rare few gained the immediate knowledge of the non-dual state of Brahman. In the Vedic and the Buddhistic ages, we find the ascendancy of the Shanta mood. So the Shanta Bhava can be seen developing during the Vedic period and also during the Buddhistic ages. We find the ascendancy of the Shanta mood culminating in the experience of non-duality. The Dasya and Aptya mood, We know that Aptya mode means the mode of looking upon God as father or mother. That is called Aptya. And Dasya is looking upon yourself as a servant and the Lord as the master. So Dasya and the Aptya mode are found to prevail in the Upanishadic age, the end of Vedic age, that is the Upanishadic age. The Shanta and the Dasya modes mixed with motiveless action is the special feature of the epic period. Now, what is epic period? Epic is Purana, the period. In the Upanishad period, it was the Dasya and Aptya. And the Shanta and the Dasya modes mixed with motiveless action, Karma Yoga, is the special feature of the epic period. Epic means Purana period, when they were Purana came into prominence, like Garuda Purana, Bhagavata Purana, Ramayana, Mahabharata. Ramayana is of the almost Rama's period. That's also okay, nearing that Purana. Mahabharata is Itihasa. Then there is the 18 Puranas, like the Vishnu Purana, Shiva Purana, Devi Purana, Devi Bhagavata, all those things. That is the Purana age, epic period. A blend of Aptya with partial Madhura is witnessed in the Tantric age, when the Tantra became prominent. And the modes of Sakhya, there is friendship, Vatsalya, there is parental love, maternal and paternal, fathers and mothers' love towards the child, thinking God as your child, that is Vatsalya. So Sakhya, friendship, and Vatsalya and Madhura are seen to flourish in all their exuberance in the Vaishnava age. When the Vaishnava age became prominent, at that time, we can see the Sakhya, the modes of Sakhya and Vatsalya and Madhura are seen to flourish in all their exuberance in the Vaishnava age. So how nicely Shardanandaji Maharaj has made a study of all these, from the beginning, from the Vedic to the Upanishadic to the Puranic to the Tantric to the Buddhistic, then the Vaishnava age, what all modes were prominent. Everything has been so nicely studied and kept in front of us. It has been made so clear. So in the religious history of India, we find all these 5 modes fully developed and flourishing side by side with the experience of non-dual consciousness. All these 5 modes, other than that, so many other modes, and also the non-dual consciousness, that is the Advaita, Vedantic mode, that is also flourishing side by side with the experience of non-dual consciousness. But this is not so among the religious communities in other parts of the world. If you take up other religions, any other religions, there is only one. They don't have any other things at all. That too not fully developed. Shardanandaji Maharaj, after making such a great study, is telling, in religious history of India, amongst the Hindus, we find all these 5 modes, and not only that 5 mode, but that highest Advaita, and other than that, so many other Tantric, Buddhistic, so many other different things have come up, have been flourishing, developing side by side with the experience of non-dual consciousness. But this is not so among the religious communities in other parts of the world. Among them, only the Shanta, only the Dasya, and only at the most the Aptya modes, that too not completely. They consider God only as father, no mother worship at all. They don't believe in the lifting up of woman to that level. No freedom to women. Can you find one president, the post of president has been occupied by a woman in America? You may talk of so much of women empowerment. You may talk of so many things, liberation and freedom to women. Show me one president of America as a woman until now. You may talk so many great things. One. One example you can give of America. So there is the fatherhood of the nation. So in the religions too, it is only fatherhood. No, motherhood has not developed like in India. Whichever country you take other than India, the fatherhood is developed. The nation is also called as fatherland. Only in India you can find it as motherland. So motherhood has been developed here. So there is only one at the most, like Shanta, Dasya, Aptya moods are found to have flourished. They do not completely. Though the songs of King Solomon, the royal sage, expressing the friendly and sweet moods in relation to God, are intact in the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim communities, the members of these communities are unable to understand the import of those songs and attribute a different meaning to them. They can't understand that at all because it is not there at all. They don't understand what is happening to Solomon, King Solomon, when he is expressing his friendly attitude and Madhura Bhava to God. There is no history of such thing in there. They can't understand. So they attribute so many other different meanings to it. So only Indians or Hindus can understand what is the feeling of King Solomon. Now, the moods of Sakya and Madhura are, it goes without saying, extend to a great extent in the Sufi community professing Islam. When Islam came in contact with Hinduism, then a new thing came up that is called Sufism. So in that, the moods of Sakya, friendship, and Madhura also are, it goes without saying, extend to great extent in the Sufi community professing Islam. Yet the generality of the Muslims regard such worship of God as contrary to the precepts of Quran. So Sufism will be destroyed, they will kill them. Sufi, this thing, tombs and other things will be destroyed, they will bomb them. They don't agree with Sufism. The modes of Sakya and Madhura are, it goes without saying, extend to a great extent in Sufi community professing Islam. Yet the generality of the Muslims regard such worships of God as contrary to the precepts of the Quran. Again, although the Catholic Christians community pay homage to Mary, the mother of Christ, it is far from the recognition of the motherhood of God. It has therefore not been as fruitful as the worship of the universal mother extant in India, in Hinduism. For it has not enabled the aspirant to realize the individual existence, knowledge, bliss. It has not been able to realize the indivisible existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute, and to experience the divine manifestation in all women without exception in any other countries other than India and Hinduism. The current of the idea of motherhood of God has disappeared midway, like the river Phalgu, a semi-mythical river which disappeared. That's called the river Phalgu. Like that, all those bhavas which came up there in other religions, they were very little expressed and they disappeared. It's only in Hinduism, only in India that all these moods and even more things are coming up. So when the mind of the aspirant is attracted to God, with the aid of some loving mood, it becomes, as we have said before, gradually absorbed in that mood, turns away from the external world and merges in itself in the self, that is Atman, which is within you. At the time of the mind's merging, its past impression, so many lives we have taken in the process of evolution, all that impression will be there in our mind, in the subconscious mind. Its past impression stands in its way, in a subtle way. Now you might have given up all the things, made your mind pure, but the last obstacle is the impressions, samskaras, deep rooted in the mind. That's why Krishna tells, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan, deep rooted in the mind. Sarvan partha manogatan, which are deeply rooted in the mind, the samskaras. the impressions. So they will stand as an obstacle. At the time of mind's merging, its past impression stands in its way and try to make it swim on the surface. It will not allow you to go down to the bottom, dive deep. It will make you float, go up. So the impressions stand in the way and try to make it swim on the surface, pushing it upwards again and again. Therefore, ordinary human minds with a load of powerful past impressions cannot generally become absorbed even in one mode in spite of their striving for their whole life or maybe many lives. It's difficult even to establish themselves in one mode because there's so much of impressions. The samskaras, the bad thoughts, impure thoughts, impurity of the mind, it will not allow you to dive deep and attain that one non-dual consciousness, go to the end. When that happens, they at first become discouraged and give up the effort. That's why many aspirants, they take up spiritual life, they cannot succeed, and they will tell, oh, the spiritual life is useless, it is all false, bogus things of the rishis, they were all bogus people. The priesthood did so many things, and they, because of their impurities of the mind, they cannot attain, and they will go away. When that happens, they at first become discouraged and give up the effort, and at last, losing faith in the gospel of spiritual realization itself, come to regard the enjoyment of the sights, taste, etc. of the external world to be the only thing worth having and pursue the same with avidity. They give up God, they give up the search of the truth. Aversion for outward things, absorption in the meditation of the object developed, object of devotional love, and the ecstasy produced by one's spiritual mood are therefore regarded in the sphere of this form of sadhana as the measure of spiritual aspirants' progress towards the goal. What is the measure? What is the yardstick to measure? I'll read it again. Aversion, hatred, aversion for outward things, sense objects, outward things, aversion for outward things, it is renunciation, dispassion, absorption in the meditation of the object, absorption in the meditation of the object of devotional love, and the ecstasy produced by one's spiritual mood are therefore regarded in the sphere of this form of sadhana as the measure of the aspirant's progress towards the goal. That is the measure. You can understand how much you have developed the aversion, dislike towards the worldly sensory enjoyments, external objects, and how much you have gone into the deep depth of absorption and meditation of the object of devotional love, and also the ecstasy produced in one's spiritual mood are therefore regarded in the sphere of this form of sadhana as the measure, yardstick, progress of the aspirant's progress towards the goal. It is difficult for one who has not attempted to cultivate any of this mode to understand the enormity of the inward struggle that an aspirant has to undergo in facing the strong obstacles caused by the manifestation of past impressions. You cannot understand. It's very, very difficult until you have tried, at least you have done something. So Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling people who have not at all attempted, or people of other religions, they cannot understand, they think it is something foolish. It is difficult for one who has not attempted to cultivate any of these modes to understand the enormity of the inward struggle that an aspirant has to undergo in facing the strong obstacles caused by the manifestation of the past impressions. The past impressions are buried, they're so strong, deep rooted. The manifestation of past impressions buried in the layers of the mind. Only one who has had the experience of these difficulties and sufferings involved will feel astonished. So why has all these been, has the preparation been done? Why Shardanandaji Maharaj preparing us? Only one who has had the experience of these difficulties and sufferings involved will feel astonished at the rapidity with which Sri Ramakrishna was able to get his mind absorbed in mood after mood after mood, and succeeding in it. Then only you can know how pure the mind. Now you can truly grasp the greatness of the mind of Sri Ramakrishna, greatness of that ancient being, purity of that ancient being. Now you can understand. Need not perform any miracle like producing some ashes, producing some gold and other things. Control of the mind, having that spiritual realization, that is more important. Anybody can produce all these things, curing of the disease and other miracles can be done at the ordinary level. But can anyone do this? So that's why Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, only one who has had the experience of these difficulties and sufferings involved will feel astonished at the rapidity, the fast, the velocity, the acceleration, at the rapidity with which Sri Ramakrishna was able to get his mind absorbed in mood after mood after moods. Now you can understand who the Avatara really is. Also, he alone can appreciate the idea that the master's mind must have been something more than human to have done so. Now you can confirm who Sri Ramakrishna is, what an ancient being and what great being Sri Ramakrishna is. Now you can understand. Just like there was a statement by Swami Vivekananda. What was that? Swami Vivekananda, after all, he finished the work everywhere. Before giving up his body, he made a statement. The work which Swami Vivekananda has done, completed in this world, none can understand. Only another Vivekananda can understand what Vivekananda has done to this world. That was the statement. If that is the ordinary thing about Swami Vivekananda, then can you imagine about Ramakrishna? Do you know another statement of Swami Vivekananda? That Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the great avatar, that's why he called him Avatara Varishta, Sarvadeva Devi Swarupa, is so great that with 1 foot dust, of Sri Ramakrishna, is a statement of Swami Vivekananda, I'm telling you, with just 1 foot dust of Sri Ramakrishna, he can produce thousands and thousands of Swami Vivekananda. With just 1 foot dust of Sri Ramakrishna, he can produce thousands and thousands of Swami Vivekananda. This is the statement of Swami Vivekananda himself. Now you can understand the enormity, the greatness. So now he alone can appreciate the idea that the master's mind must have something more than human to have done so moods after moods, going and reaching that non-real reality again and again through different paths, taking up everything. What has been practiced, the history of all religious life, from the beginning of the creation up till now, Ramakrishna started practicing everything and established himself in moods after moods. Then you can just imagine what should be the purity and the enormity, the strength of his mind. It is because of the incapacity of the ordinary human mind to understand the subtle truths of the spiritual realm that the history of the sadhanas of the spiritual heroes who are known as the incarnations of God has not been adequately recorded. It is because of the incapacity of the ordinary human mind to understand the subtle truths of the spiritual realm that the history of the sadhana, spiritual life of these spiritual heroes who are known as incarnations of God, so many have come, couldn't be understood, couldn't be recorded correctly, has not been adequately recorded because common man couldn't understand it. Whatever they understood, they have just shown it there. For all we get in recorded histories about them is concerned with their impressive acts of renunciation before they embark on the life of sadhana, and with the wonderful powers they manifest after their sadhana in redeeming man from ignorance and worldly entanglements. We find in them very little record of the extraordinary inward struggle. We find in them very little record of the extraordinary inward struggle they must have engaged themselves in during the periods of their spiritual life, spiritual sadhana, for destroying and uprooting the deep impressions of their minds and for securing mastery over themselves. Or that struggle has been described in such histories with the help of metaphors and hyperboles in such a way that it has now become quite impossible for us to separate the grain of truth from the chaff of descriptive extravagance. The reader will understand what we mean when we give a few examples. If some few examples are given, then we can understand what Shardanandaji Maharaj is trying to explain it here. The reader will understand what we mean when we give a few examples. Sri Krishna was engaged on many occasions in performing austerities with a view to acquiring particular powers for the purpose of doing good to humanity. But no description of the succession of the moods of his mind is found except that he remained for some time standing on one leg. He remained for some time standing on one leg, living on just water or air alone. Only that much is recorded. Nothing more of the sadhana of Sri Krishna is given. Sri Krishna was engaged on many occasions in performing austerities, tapas. Krishna also performed so much of tapas and spiritual practices, sadhana, with a view to acquiring particular powers for the purpose of doing good to humanity, loka kalyana. But no description of the succession of the moods of his mind in detail is found, except that he remained for some time standing on one leg, living on water or air alone. We do not get as detailed an account of Buddha's sadhana as of his detachment from the world, of his leaving home for the purpose of becoming an anchorite, and afterwards of his establishing the Dharma Chakra, the wheel of religion. However, a little of the history of his spiritual moods is available. However, a little of the history of his spiritual moods is available in the life of Buddha. Unlike in the case of other spiritual heroes, it is recorded that abstraining from food and drink and taking a firm resolve to succeed, he was engaged in practicing austerities, tapas, and meditation, dhyana, for 6 long years without leaving his seat. He sat in one place, in one seat, asana, for 6 long years without taking food and drink and taking a firm resolve to succeed. He was engaged in practicing austerity and meditation for 6 long years without leaving his seat, and that controlling the internal vital forces and practicing meditation, he entered into samadhi. His biographer has also tried to vivify his struggle against the latent impressions of the mind by introducing the story of his fight with Mara. The Buddhistic Satan is called Mara. The history of the striving of Jesus is also not available. After recording a few events of Jesus' life till he was 12, his biographer has described how in his 13th year, Jesus was baptized by John, a perfect holy man, and entered alone a lonely desert where he practiced austerity and meditation for 40 days. How, though tempted by Satan, he came out victorious and returned from there, and how at last he engaged himself in doing good to humanity. He continued to be in the gross body for 3 years only after that event. There are therefore no records whatever of how he spent his time from the 12th to the 13th year of his life. Although a great deal of the sequence of events in Shankara's life is found, that is, Shankaracharya, Bhagavan Shankaracharya is found, one has very often only to infer the history of moods of his mind. Many events of the sadhana of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are found recorded. The story of his exalted love of God, devoid of the slightest tinge of desire, has been described in a way unintelligible to the ordinary minds in the form of metaphors with the help of the stories of the love between Radha and Krishna and their separation from each other. And it has to be admitted that Chaitanya and his chief companions have recorded in some details, though in metaphorical languages, the changes that came upon the minds of the aspirants from the inception to almost the ultimate perfected states of each of the spiritual moods of Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhura, with a special emphasis on the last, that is Madhura Bhava. But they have not given out the ultimate truth that when the aspirant's mind becomes completely absorbed in any of the aforesaid three modes, it experiences its oneness with the object of its love and merges in the non-dual reality. Again, the important thing has to be noted, but in all the sadhanas of all these people, nowhere has it been given out the ultimate truth that when the aspirant's mind becomes completely absorbed in any of the aforesaid three methods or any of the five methods, it experiences its oneness with the object of its love and merge in the non-real reality, non-dual reality. The unique life of Sri Ramakrishna and the extraordinary history of his sadhana have taught us that ultimate truth very clearly in the modern age and enable us to understand that all the religious moods of all the religious communities of the world bring the mind of the aspirant to one and the same goal, leaving aside all the other things that may be learned from his life. It may be said here that the whole world is undoubtedly indebted to Sri Ramakrishna for all time, for the all inclusive Catholicity of his spiritual vision, establishing the truths of all religion. So the whole world stands indebted to Sri Ramakrishna. Why? Leaving aside all the other things that may be learned from the life of Sri Ramakrishna, it may be said here that the whole world is undoubtedly indebted, should be grateful to Sri Ramakrishna's life, to him, for all time, for the all inclusive Catholicity of his spiritual vision, establishing the truths of all religions. Now, we'll stop our conversation of life of Sri Ramakrishna, the great master, here, because we have read and tried to understand so many terse things, so many philosophy behind this Madhura Bhava and all the other moods. We have taken up all the moods of different Avatara Purushas, so many saints, and so many things were put into our head through these. So if we also read too many things, then it may get jumbled up. So let us stop here. Already too many things have gone to our heart today. So we will try to understand that, sit, meditate on that, manana, chewing the cud. And then we will get ready for the next discussion, that is tomorrow morning. Until then, we will be meditating on what we have studied. You can read it again and again, and understand what Sri, because I've sent all that ebook of Sri Ramakrishna to everybody. I had sent it to everybody. You can go through that, it will be there, and you can meditate on that and get ready for tomorrow's discussion. Again, we are preparing for the highest bhava, highest mood, that is the Madhura Bhava. So before that, Shardananda Jimarji is explaining the science, the events and everything so nicely, making it clearer and clearer. So now, if you have any questions, if you have any doubts on today's discussion, you can ask. Any questions, any doubts on today's discussion? Or any other things about spiritual life? You can ask. No doubts? No questions?
Maharaj, just a small doubt. So the chitta vritti that you're referring,
Yeah.
so whatever we hear, all these good thoughts, even those thoughts also come when we sit for meditation.
Yeah.
So
All of chitta vritti.
even do we need to get rid of those even good thoughts while we meditate?
No. See, suppose you have a thorn in your leg. Suppose you are walking barefooted. A thorn enters your leg. How do you remove that thorn? By another thorn, isn't it? By a needle. So what do you do after that? Do you keep that thorn or the needle into the place where you have removed that thorn because it has helped you? You throw away both the thorns. So with the help of the good thoughts, you remove the bad thoughts, then you go to the higher things, still higher and higher things. So first you should take the help of the good thoughts, then that good thoughts will lead you to remove the bad thoughts, then you will be going beyond that. So we have not yet gone to the position where we can give up the good thoughts. Punya, good karmas, and other things, they will help us to remove all those bad thoughts. When the mind becomes pure, automatically everything will be left behind and it will merge in the Lord. So we should not forcibly remove anything. So only the bad thoughts are to be removed, replaced by good thoughts.
Yes, Maharaj. Okay, clear, Maharaj.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Pranam Maharaj.
Yes, Mother.
Yeah, actually we are just completed the Japa Yagna at 11:30. We are in Belagaum Japa Yagna online. So
Okay.
your lecture, it was really very useful to me while doing Japa. Just listening to this and then doing the Japa was a fantastic experience on this.
Very good.
It's
Very
very
good.
nice.
Very good.
Actually, from 10 to 11:30 there was a Japa. So the total your class time was really useful to me for doing this Japa. It was very nice, Swamiji. Very good experience we had.
Very
Ram
good.
Krishna.
Very good. Jai Ram. So if there are no questions, we will end the session with the prayer. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Prenite Prenitam Jagat Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.